Hello, everyone, and welcome to our How to Increase Your Prosperity with the Principles of Louise Hay webinar. We are so excited to be sharing everything with you today. My name is Dr. Patricia Crane. I was very privileged to study with Louise personally a number of years ago, and it evolved into the worldwide training program that we have today. And I am thrilled to welcome our panel members. First of all, we have Sandra Filer, who is our teacher in the USA. She has a lot to share with us. And then we have three of our Heal Your Life workshop leaders and coaches. Susan Mitchell from Chicago, or well, in Illinois, near Chicago. Yep. And we have Greta Counts from Atlanta, Georgia, and Doyle Ward from Houston, Texas. And finally, we have our amazing admin, Christy Dixon, who is in California as well. And she keeps me sane most of the time. So that's very helpful. But I want to introduce the webinar a little bit and tell you, first of all, one of the things that Louise said is that manifesting money is the easiest thing to do. Now, I know that many of you who are on this webinar are probably going, oh, I don't think so. But what Louise also said was that it was easier to teach a workshop on sexuality than money, because she found that people tended to get really stuck in their money beliefs. And so we're going to ask you today to really open up your hearts and your minds. Obviously, you're interested in increasing prosperity because you're on this webinar, and just really allow the ideas that are going to be shared in the affirmations to help take you to a whole nother level of prosperity. Now, I'm going to start out with a reading from one of my favorite books from Louise, Meditations to Heal Your Life. And she has so much wisdom in this book, I would highly recommend it. You can basically have any issue going on in your life, you can open it up and find some inspiration. So today I'm going to read from that book. And here's the main affirmation: I bless my income with love and watch it grow. You can close your eyes and take some deep breaths and just really listen to these wise words and take them into your heart and your mind. My income is perfect for me. Every day I love myself a little more. And as I do, I find that I am open to new avenues of income. Prosperity comes through many forms and channels. It is not limited, even though some people may tell you it is. I can love my parents and still go beyond their income level. There is one infinite universe, and out of it comes all the income that everyone makes. It has nothing to do with getting. It is really allowing myself to accept. I accept a healthy flow of income for myself. And so it is. And so it is. So beautiful words from Louise that we start with. And I'm going to actually now go to our trainer from the US, Sandra Filer. And Sandra has worked with us in the Heal Your Life community for 14 years, and she is known for her enthusiasm and her colorful nature. And she has really dedicated so much of the work to, really helping others with hundreds of workshops and coaching, etc. And she is now our teacher trainer in the US. So I'm going to turn it over to Sandra, and she's going to tell you a bit about how she went from a financial mess to financial success. Sandra.
All right. So hi, everybody. Super excited that you're here. This topic is near and dear to my heart. And so I'll just share briefly that prior to my life with Heal Your Life, I was a banker. I have a master's degree in business, and I was a vice president. So I worked with money from the time I was about 16 years old. And so to say that when I found myself in a financial disaster, meaning we had collectively 12 credit cards with balances. I had to sell my brand new car. I had to sell my brand new condo, all because of my financial situation. We were collectively in debt to the Internal Revenue Service, over $80,000. And so it was a mess. It was an absolute mess. And through a lot of anger releasing about my situation, years and years of anger releasing, and creating affirmations, and then also the practical action piece around hiring professionals that could support me. I'm happy to report that now at the age of 58 years old, we are debt free and we have money in a brokerage account. Yay! And we drive around in a car that's paid for.
Oh, that's wonderful, Sandra.
Yeah.
It's a great story. And I think I love what you said about using affirmations, but also the practical part,
Mhm.
because that's something that is often left out in the metaphysical teachings about prosperity. You have to be a good steward of money. Yeah, you need to be responsible along with everything else that you're doing. We don't say, oh, max out your credit cards and the universe will take care of it. We encourage people to be responsible along with all their affirmations and everything that they're doing. So I'm going to go to Greta next. And Greta, what was one of the beliefs from your childhood that you had to overcome and had to change when you found Louise's work?
Wow. One of my beliefs was that you had to work really hard,
Mhm.
have money, and then you had to wait for somebody else to notice your hard work for you to feel valued.
Ooh. That must have been a challenge, waiting for someone else to notice. Yeah. Well, I
Absolutely.
want to say a little more about Greta too. She is based in Atlanta, Georgia. She's a very sought after speaker there, as well as being a Heal Your Life workshop leader and coach. She really has a passion for helping people find their personal greatness and just live happy, healthier lives, and really bring who they are and that beauty that they are to the surface. So she does a wonderful, wonderful job with that. So what happened when you started changing that idea that you had to work so hard and wait for somebody else?
Oh my goodness. It changed immediately because I did not know that me valuing myself was the key.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Oh, that's great. Okay, I'm going to go on to Doyle. And Doyle, again, is from Houston, Texas. And he also is a Heal Your Life coach and workshop leader and sought after speaker. And I do know that Doyle led an affirmation clinic every Friday night for I don't know how many years. And he helped hundreds of people during that time really create powerful affirmations. And in addition to the work that he does with Heal Your Life, he's also a psychic medium. And he also really loves just bringing out that special nature in each person and really helping them find, their life purpose, their motivation, and change not only prosperity, but other areas of their life. So, Doyle, how about you? What was your background with prosperity growing up?
Not good.
Okay.
Oh my goodness. I grew up in a household where we had enough, but it was barely enough, if that makes sense. And so, it was all about what we could afford, like that. What we can't afford this, we can't afford that. And so I thought, as I was growing up, that money was like the secret to happiness. And so what I set out to do was try to make my own money, right? Because then I would be happy. Um, and I can tell you that I went into the corporate world and I spent the first half of my life working on success, and I became a workaholic. And I did make money, but I couldn't keep it. I couldn't keep it. So for me, it was about deserving. I also learned you had to work very hard, but it was deserving to keep it, right? So I could make the money, I couldn't keep it. And that was a big change for me with this work, learning my value and feeling deserving of it.
Yeah, that deservability and loving yourself really goes together, doesn't it? And the more we love ourselves and, in that healthy way and know that we deserve it, the easier everything is to come to us. That's great. Okay. So next I'm going to ask Susan Mitchell, who's also a chiropractor, to share some things with us, but to give you a little more of her background, she's been in the wellness profession for many years and began to notice that people and their beliefs had something to do with how they recovered from things. And that led her to do the Heal Your Life work. And she now helps other professionals in the wellness industry and, coaches them and teaches them more of the principles that she knows. So again, for you, Susan, what was it like growing up and what did you find particularly useful with Louise's work?
So, similar to what everyone said, I was taught you have to work hard and you work hard until you're exhausted and then you work some more. And that's the only way you can be successful in life. And it was all based around fear. It was always my grandparents, my father's parents, when he was a young man, filed bankruptcy. And so that's how he lived his life. Like he would never be in that situation. So everything was fear. So there was that. And probably the biggest thing for me was that when I started journaling, like through Louise's work of like, money is, and rich people are, it was like, wow, like I was very successful as a chiropractor early on. I, like Doyle, was making money, but I wasn't keeping it and I had guilt around it because I was taught that, we were fortunate enough to have a boat growing up. And so if we were on the lake and a bigger boat went by, like a really big boat, it's like, they're probably a drug dealer, or they do something dishonest or, so it was like, when I recognized that, I was like, oh my gosh, if I think wealthy people are bad human beings, I don't want to be that. So energetically, I would have never allowed myself to become wealthy. So that was huge for me, of working through that and finding examples of, no, wealthy people are amazing human beings. They're, just like poor people. It's, that was big for me. That was really limiting me in my life.
And I think that is a really powerful idea, because I think most of us were brought up being taught that rich people aren't very nice.
Yes.
And I remember there's a whole nother saying that says money doesn't make you, one way or the other. It makes you more of who you are.
Yes.
And so there are lots of people with money who are very generous with their money and donations. So, but I think that's a belief. I'm glad you brought that out, that many people were brought up with, because it's easy to kind of be negative about somebody who has more, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Christy, how about you? What was that
So-
upbringing like?
So, it's very interesting. Like Doyle said, there was the sense that there was always just enough,
Mhm.
just enough. And I had parents, who had two different ways of looking at it. I had a father who, when he was home, he was fully home and he would like to play a lot. And we would go out to eat, we would go on trips, we would do lots of fun things, and then he'd go to work. And I can remember my mom going to get the bills from the mailbox and, crying. I still don't like to get the mail. Right. And so there was this, let's play. And then there was all this guilt and fear over that.
Mhm.
And so for me, it was huge when I saw Louise's video on prosperity. That was, and I've seen it numerous times now, and it was so inspiring and eye-opening. And my mantra became, there is more than enough. When I realized that it doesn't take from anybody, and every time I spend an extra dollar, there doesn't have to be guilt. It's fine. There is more than enough. And then, like Sandra said, the practical application. Don't be afraid to watch your money. Don't be afraid to think about it. Don't be afraid of your money. And I realized I was very afraid of my money. And since changing that, since having the mantra that there is more than enough, like Sandra said, my husband and I have no debt, outside of the normal sort of debt, like the house and stuff like that, but there's no credit card debt. There's none of that. And we have money in our savings account, and we never get to the end of the month, and I never feel that fear anymore. Yeah, so it's a big change to think there is more than enough.
That's great. Wonderful. More than enough. And, while we're sharing on here, if those of you who are joining us, if you want to just put on the chat where you're from, that would be great. And we also are going to be fairly soon taking some questions from you specifically that you might want answered. And so I'll share about my background. I grew up in a very comfortable middle-class home. There was enough. But there was also this underlying something that I didn't even realize until I started working with Louise's prosperity principles. And ours was, you can have nice things, but not exactly what you want, because exactly what you want is always too expensive. And so my mother always had the car that she didn't really want, but it got us around. I got the, look-alike designer clothes while my friends all got the designer clothes. And so there was a little bit of embarrassment about that. But the other thing my mom would do is that, like for Christmas, she would buy us lots of little things that didn't cost very much. So it would look like we were getting a lot for Christmas, but it would have been actually much better training to get one nice present, and get exactly what we might have wanted. And so that was a huge revelation to me, to realize that I had that belief that always had me choosing something that wasn't exactly what I wanted. And so finally, I was buying a condo on my own a number of years ago. And I said, okay, I'm going to change that belief and just get exactly what I want. Now, I want to tell you that didn't necessarily mean that was the most expensive thing. It was just to look at what is exactly what I want. And I was just very happy to be able to furnish and, decorate my condo that way. So one of the things that I hope you're all getting from what we're sharing so far is that it takes a while to uncover those old beliefs, but that is really a starting point, because if you're working with your affirmations, but you have some really old, deep beliefs about prosperity that aren't meshing, then your affirmations aren't going to be manifesting the way that you want. So first is really understanding the old beliefs. You might want to, after this webinar, sit down and say, okay, what was I taught growing up? Let me write that out and look at the ones that I want to change. And if you had positive, ideas about prosperity in your family, that's great. So that's wonderful. Now, we've all, manifested things in different ways. So I'm going to just ask for some sharing now from the panel as well. I'm going to start again with Sandra. And there was one manifestation you told me about that was just so much fun. So I'm sure everybody on the webinar would like to hear it.
Yeah, so I'll share quickly, because so in that whole disaster period, we were really looking for the practical solution to our dilemma. And that one of those practical solutions was getting $37,000. We needed $37,000. And my husband actually was out at a car show and just decided to buy a raffle ticket and also fill out a survey. And lo and behold, he won a car, which is like craziness, right? At the time, the retail value of that car was exactly $37,000. So the universe delivered. Now, I just want to say one quick thing about this, because when we're talking about beliefs, and sometimes we discover those beliefs through practical application and exercises like the one Susan shared about the belief. Very quickly, we learned a deep-seated belief with my husband when he picked up that brand new car, because he couldn't even drive it home. He was nauseous. At 50 plus years old, he'd never owned a brand new car in his entire life, because his belief was that only bankers, lawyers, etc., ever drove nice cars. And so just the other day, we decided we no longer needed to be prosperous in our number of vehicles. We actually sold the Lincoln, took a picture of it, so we forever hold that memory in our heart as a turning point. And we walked away with $10,000 in cash. And made a deposit to the Edward Jones account.
That's great. And, I think that's a great example of, how the universe shows up with your acceptance in a way that you don't expect. And so that's one thing about affirmations. Don't expect a particular outcome exactly, because the universe has a way of bringing things to you in ways that you can't even imagine. And the other thing that I really encourage people to do is we tend to do affirmations when there's some problem, when we've got a financial problem or a relationship problem or a health problem. And my feeling is that you want to be doing affirmations for every area of your life all the time. Don't wait because all of a sudden you need something. And also with affirmations, especially after prosperity, to just have fun with them. And I'm going to tell you a story a little bit later that was just a really fun one that I experienced. So let me go to our other panelists again. And Susan, is there a manifestation you would like to share with people, and maybe a particular technique that Louise's work really helped you with?
Gosh, I think that one technique that was really big for me, I was actually at the workshop leader training, and was forgiveness, and how much I never thought about forgiveness being attached to money. Like I visualize. I've always, as I was saying earlier, very good at attracting money in the past, but I went through a divorce and had some pretty big financial surprises show up. And early on decided that I was not going to be that victim. I wasn't going to be the bitter divorcee, and I had a lot of reasons that I could share with you, but I'll keep them to myself. And so I had a lot of reasons to be a victim, but I decided immediately that's not how I was going to play this. This is not how it's going to happen. And so I was working on forgiveness. I was doing anger releasing, as Sandra was talking about, and forgiveness. And so I go to this workshop leader training, and I think, I've got this. Like, I am so healthy. Like, just watch me, shine. And then you brought out the pillow exercise, and I was a hot mess in a matter of seconds. I was like, I'll choose to forgive my ex-husband but I've already done so much work. It's totally fine. And there was still so much there. And so that was a really big thing for me and I still do that. You told us at that time that Louise, or maybe I heard Louise say it, of that she did, I believe, like once a month. And at the time I thought, well, that's a lot, because again, I thought I was so healthy. And, but so I do that regularly. Of just that movement brought up more for me. So I think that sometimes when we do this work, like the money is, like I was just talking about, there's still stuff hidden in there that we don't necessarily come out with journaling. So it's that movement really did make a big difference. So I just encourage people to look at that.
That's great. Yeah. Okay, Doyle. And then somebody has their hand raised too to ask something. Go ahead, Doyle. Can you share a manifestation or some particular technique that really helped you with Louise's work? I know you're a master affirmation person.
Oh, thank you for saying that. I don't know. Yes, I have. I want to talk about like how I launched my career after I went through the training and became a Heal Your Life coach. I was in the corporate world before, and I had left that to become a coach, but I had no clients. I had no reach. I didn't know anybody that I could look to say, hey, be my client. And so one of the things that I learned from Louise about prosperity was that not only do we affirm for it, but if we really affirm for something we want, we need to actually expect it. We need to prepare for it. So one of the things that I did is I thought, okay, I'm going to put that to the test. And so I sat down and I was going through all my material for coaching, and I thought, okay, if I had a client today, if they started today, what would I need? And what would we do? And all of that. And so I thought, well, I would need a little folder, and I need to get organized, and I need some, handouts and assessments and all this stuff. So I thought, okay, I'm going to make 5 folders for my 5 new clients. And I'm going to do my affirmations, and I'm ready for them. Well, I made those folders, and I put them in my little briefcase, and I took it everywhere with me. So I was always ready to meet my new client. Okay. Well, guess what? That month I had to make 5 more, because I went from 0 with no email list, nothing, to 10 paying clients in my first month. And that's been about 10 years ago, and I've never looked back.
Great. That's a great example. Prepare for it. That's wonderful. Okay. Wonderful. Greta.
Wow. I wanted to share that my experience with this work was actually manifesting my opportunity to come to the Heal Your Life training.
Okay.
So I had taken my daughters, I have twin daughters, and they were in college in Kentucky. And we were driving up, and I was reading through the Science of Mind magazine. And in the back was this awesome ad for the Heal Your Life training. And I looked at it and I read it and I thought, oh my goodness, I have to go to this. So when I got home, I dialed in. There was an introductory of the work talking about with Patricia and Rick. And so I dialed in to hear about the program. And then I heard the investment and I thought, wow, I won't be able to do that because I have twin daughters in college. I mean, what can you say? And there's no extra money for me to go to San Diego to get my license. Well, I had purchased the You Can Heal Your Life book, and I was reading about the affirmations and the mirror work. So I thought, well, let me see if this works. If it works, then I'll be able to go. And so I wrote some affirmations. I got in front of the mirror, and ta-da, that was October of 2011. So in February of 2012, I was in San Diego, staying at the Bahia, getting my training. And I received my license in March of 2012. So I used the work that she talks about and the techniques to manifest my business with the Heal Life. And it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. I'll never forget it.
Oh, that's great. That's a wonderful story. And it is amazing how people have manifested the funds to come to the training. I'm looking at the chat, and there's one, basically wasn't a question, but a statement that I can understand from Mary saying, I'm so tired of believing if my mother can't have it, I can't, even though she's passed. And I think that is a really, really good point to bring up, because there is often a belief that we can't go beyond what our parents had or did, because that will somehow betray them. And that's actually a question that we've used in our prosperity workshops is, who would you betray if you became more successful? And 90% of the time, I would say it is either dad or mom or both, that there's a feeling of betrayal to go beyond them. And that actually happened to me even after I had already started in Louise's work. I got to a point, my father was quite high up in a company that he worked for before he retired, passed away quite a few years before. But when I got to the point where I was making as much money as he had and just about to go over that, I started having this strange feeling of sort of anxiety when I would look at my bank account and things like that. And it came to me, I'm concerned about going beyond what my father manifested. And so I would say to you that that is a very common concern. And that's something that everybody on the webinar, you can ask yourselves, am I concerned about going beyond where my parents were? Will I feel like I was betraying them? And the truth is that you're not betraying anyone except yourself. And so to know that you can deserve and that you can be more prosperous or more whatever, and still be honoring your parents in the way that they brought you up, even if there was, some difficulties there. So thank you for putting that on the chat, because I think that really is a very important one that we can share about. Okay, Christy, any particular technique that for you with Louise's work was helpful?
That's it. I have to say that with prosperity, the affirmations just made a huge difference, because there was that pull, that push and pull of wanting to play, of being afraid to spend any money, and then every time you spent money. And so it was a constant, even before I believed it, there was a constant use of the affirmations. And I had several, but really, like I said, the mantra became every single time I felt that fear. If I was standing somewhere and looking, like at a grocery store, and looking at something that cost less and something that cost more, and I wanted the more thing, and maybe it's by a couple of cents, maybe it's by a few dollars, and I would feel that fear come in, there is more than enough. Get the one you want. And it just every time I felt it, whether it was something big or something small, I just used that mantra to stop the fear in its tracks. And now it's not that it never shows up, it does still sometimes, but I know it, I see it, and I can, recognize it and work on it. Like, what was it about that moment that brought the fear back?
Great. Okay. And I'm also looking at the chat, and I know that Greta said you increased your value with a lot of mirror work. So why don't you talk a bit about mirror work?
Oh my goodness. Mirror work. Here you go.
There it is.
Okay. So mirror work is everything for me. There's something about seeing my own face and then hearing my own voice with the affirmations that just gives me the inner confidence that I need to do it. Mirror work has completely changed my life. I do it every single day. I don't ever miss a day. When I go out and about and I come back home, if something wonderful happens, I run to the mirror and high five myself. If something not so wonderful happens, I come home and I get in front of the mirror and we talk about it. And as a result, I have become my own best friend. It increased my value tremendously. And I I think it freed everybody else up who was close to me too, because I think sometimes we naturally want something from people, even if we don't know it. But now I go to myself first. To no matter what it is, I go to myself first. And so mirror work drove my value through the roof, and I live by it. I do it all the time, all the time. I'm never anywhere without a mirror.
Yeah. Well, and that's great because that is one of the fundamental techniques that Louise teaches. And it's very confronting to people when they first look at themselves in the mirror, really look, not just when you're fixing your hair or whatever. Um, and so that mirror work really does go deeply into one's own self to be able to make some changes. And those of you who are on the webinar, probably a lot of you know about the mirror work. If you don't, what Louise recommends is that you go to the mirror and say, I love you. I really love you. And if you can't get to that point initially, to say, I'm willing to love you. So sometimes we have to walk back a little bit and say, I'm willing to have something change before we can actually get there. And that's okay. But that's great. So I'm sure everybody else in our panel has used mirror work, right? Yes. There's the mirror work book. All right, that's great. Now, one of the things that I actually didn't generally hear when I first got started with the prosperity work, because there's a lot of that out there. And, there are people that promise you certain things and this and that. But what I didn't hear much about was forgiveness. And somebody on the panel's already mentioned that. But, there is definitely forgiveness work to do, not only for ourselves. Maybe we haven't, used money responsibly or run up a lot of debt or whatever, but forgiving other people that may have betrayed us with money or haven't paid us, for something that they needed, that you needed, or as you've loaned somebody money and they didn't pay you back. And I know when I started realizing that forgiveness was a part of my increasing my own prosperity and started doing the forgiveness work, a few months later, I got a check from someone I had not seen for 7 years who owed me money for rent when we had been roommates. And she sent me the check for the full amount. I mean, she increased it, added in interest even. And I was absolutely shocked, but that is not why I did the forgiveness, so somebody could pay me back. I did it just so that energy wouldn't be there anymore. That anger and feeling of being betrayed wasn't there anymore. So are there any of our panel members that want to share something about forgiveness and prosperity?
I think you said something really important there I was talking about forgiving my ex-husband, but I did have to do a lot of work for forgiving myself as well, because I allowed it. Because of my belief systems around money, I didn't want to look at it. I didn't want to know how much money I was making because I thought rich people were bad. So I did have to forgive myself and learn to trust myself again. And so the forgiving yourself is just as important, and I think oftentimes overlooked.
Great. Anybody else?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Forgiveness is a huge part of what turned it around for me with prosperity. I would do similar to what you guys have been talking about, especially Susan. You make money, and then if you don't keep it, then you beat yourself up for it, or at least that's what I did. And so I didn't want to know how much money I had. I didn't want to look at it either, because I had all this guilt and fear and shame came into it. Like, now the money's gone, where did it go? And now I feel bad about it. So I had to forgive myself for that, and know that it's okay to take a look at what really is. It's okay to look at kind of what's wrong. It doesn't mean I'm bad. It just means that I didn't know, or I learned something different. And I also had to go back then and forgive, the people in my community that raised me with those beliefs as well. They're not necessarily bad people. They just learned that from whoever taught them that. And I had to forgive a lot of that. I still have to do it, if I'm being honest. Forgiveness is not something you do once and you're done.
Right.
It continues.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that Louise often says in writing, and when you would listen to her in person, is that everyone's doing the best they can with the knowledge and awareness and understanding they have at the time. And that's certainly true for ourselves, that when we know better, we do better. When you learn the different concepts, you're doing better, right? And so the people around us as well. And so that's another piece of the forgiveness, is knowing that people are doing the best they can at the time and being willing to forgive them and let it go. I do want to ask if people have questions. Someone had their hand up a little while ago and I didn't see a question on the chat, but if you have a question that you'd like to ask about prosperity, please go ahead and post it on the chat, and then we will do our best to answer whatever your question is. Okay. Okay. We're going to talk a lot about affirmations too, because as you've heard already, everyone on the call here is doing their affirmations in our panel. And one of my favorite affirmations is unexpected income is always coming my way. And if you haven't ever used that one before, I say start using it immediately while you're even on this webinar, because it is amazing what can happen. And a number of years ago when I was working on, with Louise, and I'd gone back to visit my mother who was living in New Jersey at the time, and she was complaining about not having enough money, and she was on Social Security at the time. So I said, okay, Mom, we're going to do an affirmation. And I wrote out, unexpected income is always coming my way. We put it up on her refrigerator with a magnet, and she's looking at me like I'm absolutely nuts. Like, this can't possibly be okay. Well, would you believe, yes, of course you will. The next day, she got a phone call from her brother, my uncle, and she's on the phone and she's looking at me and she's listening to him and she's looking at the refrigerator, and she gets off the phone. She said, I guess this stuff works. And what happened, Mom? She said, well, I'm getting a check for $750 from my father, who cashed in an insurance policy that was maxed out. And he said, well, I'm not dead yet, but I might as well share it with the kids. And so her part of it was $750. So that really sold her on, how powerful affirmations could be. And that happened within one day. Now, I'm not going to promise those of you who are on the webinar that'll happen immediately tomorrow in the next 5 minutes, but unexpected income is always coming my way is a great affirmation to use, because otherwise you're thinking, oh, it has to be with my income or this or that or the other thing. And you're thinking in a very fixed way, but we don't know what the universe wants to bring. So has anyone else been using that affirmation or used that affirmation and had unexpected income coming in? Yeah, Christy?
Oh, it happens all the time. It's so weird. Like, I can remember when I first heard that one, and I think at Greta's training, the 2012 one, which was my first one that I attended, and I was like, okay, come on, but where is unexpected income just going to show up from? And I think it was later that year. We had lost our home, and part of my affirmation process was manifesting a new home for us. We'd lost it in like the big 2009 crash, and we had done that. And we got a check in the mail for $36,000. It was a lawsuit from we didn't even know we were part of. It was a class action lawsuit that we had been a part of because of the bad financial practices from our first house. And it just, we called our tax person. We're like, is this real? What do we do with this? She's like, cash it. And we used it to, do some updates on our new house that we had manifested. So it's beautiful.
Great. Anyone else with that particular affirmation?
I've noticed with affirmations, I have them on my bathroom mirror. I have them in my car. I laminate them and I have them everywhere. And before I had them everywhere, I used to just have them on my bathroom mirror. And I would have, periods where I have all these things happening. And then I'd be like, gosh, I just feel like I haven't really been manifesting as much lately. And always I would take them off my mirror for my cleaning lady to come, and then I wouldn't put them back up. And so then I wouldn't be doing my affirmations for a few days or maybe even a few weeks. And I'm like, what is going on in my life? And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing my affirmations. And that's just happened over and over again. And as soon as I put them back up there, things start changing again. So it's just proven it to me.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, we do have a question for Doyle about preparing for something, but how to time it. How do I judge I'm ready at this time? A little more elaboration, please. Not about money, but in general, for example, getting promoted at work.
I would say let go of the timing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, don't get wrapped up in are you ready? If you can want it, you're ready. If you can think of it, it exists for you. So maybe there's some preparation that needs to happen, but give up the timing of it. So in other words, forget the promotion for a minute and let's think about what you want on the other end of that promotion. So let's say you already had the promotion. How would you feel? What would your bank account look like? What would your life be like? And what do you hope to gain from it? And that's what I would focus on, affirming those feelings, feeling prosperous, maybe more time at home, bigger bank account, whatever. I would focus on that and let the universe work out the timing of how things go. So don't be afraid to affirm for it now, even if you're not totally sure if you're ready or the timing of it. If you can think of it, it's thinking of you.
That's great. Okay, we have another question. I'm going to give this one to Greta. What do you suggest about retaining income instead of letting it flow right out? And several of you have mentioned that. So what do you suggest about retaining income?
Just writing an affirmation that resonates with yourself about that, because that can be viewed a whole lot of different ways, but write that you find it easy to keep it, that is easy for you, for it to be in your experience. But just make the affirmation resonate with yourself. That's something I want to say too, that affirmations are great, but if you don't make them work for you, if you don't give them the sound of your own voice, sometimes they don't feel like they're working. So sometimes you need to personalize it and you need to say it the way you need to hear it so that it can really work for you.
Right. That's a great point too. Yeah. And, back to the beliefs for a moment here, then we talked about, writing down the beliefs, understanding what you believed as a child and what you want to change. And so another technique is what we call the inner child work, which probably many of you are familiar with. And that's actually getting back in touch with that child that you were at whatever age feels like it might be the right time for you in terms of the prosperity beliefs, since that's what we're focused on for this webinar. But really talking to that child part of you and saying, it's okay for you to be prosperous. It's okay for you to go beyond your parents. It's okay for you to feel comfortable with money. And, really connecting in with what those beliefs and maybe those fears were that the child had, and being able to, in a meditation, talk to that child part of yourself that still resides there and say, it's really okay. And being able to, comfort that child that there is light and there's more that can happen and there are changes that can happen and you're in the midst of making them, which is wonderful. So I encourage you to do some inner child work as well. Another thing is to, again, I said earlier, about how we tend to get so serious when we're doing our affirmations because all of a sudden it's so important that we have to do this. And to have fun and use them in ways that, it might not be something that you really need right now or even want right now. And you can have fun with the affirmations. And one of the ones that I did because of a workshop on prosperity I went to was having a free vacation in Hawaii. And so I would just say the affirmation every once in a while. It's so great to have a free vacation. I would smell the plumeria. I would feel the ocean breezes on my face. And I wasn't doing this every day, but just, it was like a fun thing to just try out with the universe. And a few months later, I happened to meet a woman that I had known and seen, for not really coaching earlier, but just through some grief issues that she had. And she had gone to a workshop in Hawaii. And I said, oh, well, where do you stay when you go there? And she said, oh, my husband and I have a condo and I'd love to give you a free week there. And I was so thrilled. This was, like, okay, this stuff really does work. And so it was a really fun manifestation. And I ended up having a wonderful time in Hawaii with the guy that I was dating at the time. So have fun with them, affirm for things that, I don't care if it ever happens, but if it does, it'd be wonderful. And when people question affirmations, one of the ones examples that I always give is when you haven't seen somebody and you think of them and you wonder, how is so-and-so doing? If all of you had this experience and suddenly they show up in the grocery store, or they call you out of the blue or whatever. And so that's really an example of an affirmation that goes out into that universal consciousness where we all are, but it isn't something that you feel real tied to. And so it can manifest really easily. And that's part of the issue. And, you know, really the secret to manifesting with affirmations is that you trust the process. You trust when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen. You don't make up how it's going to happen, because divine consciousness has a much bigger picture than you do and can provide the means for it that you haven't even thought of. So let me go back and ask one of our panel members, or all of them, if you would like to share some other manifestation with the group on the webinar that happened for you, maybe in a very unexpected way. Sandra.
It's something that I keep hearing in my head, so I want to share it real quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And that is that we're a panel of, you've heard, hardworking, successful people. And so for me, and we've heard many of us mention this as well, deserving. So in talking about prosperity of time, is that my affirmation right now is let it be enough. Because that achiever part of me always wants to be doing more. It's like Greta was talking about, that validation. And so my affirmation is to give myself permission to let it be enough. Let it be enough. Allow my inner child to play and have some fun. Let it be enough. Let it be enough. Have fun. So what's manifesting in my life is less stress, more pleasure. And so that feels really good. So I just wanted to speak to that for all of those of you that may have joined us that are also hardworking, successful people climbing up whatever ladder you may be climbing. Know that it's enough. Let it be enough.
Let it be enough. One step at a time. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, there's another question on here. It says someone admits they're wrong and owes you money, but simply will not pay. Just deliberate belligerence. Where do we draw the line on being taken advantage of and pursuing what is simply just? Forgiving emotional wrongs and words seem easier because someone was caught up in the moment. Okay, who would like to answer that one? About when the person says they're wrong, but they're still not going to pay you back.
I would say to let go of the need for them to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Just release it.
Yeah.
Because if you're holding on to it and having some type of expectation, then you're not really allowing the universe to support you.
Right.
So love yourself enough to let it go.
Yeah. Yeah. I would totally agree with that. Yeah. Because the thing is, forgiveness doesn't mean that you're going to get an outcome from that other person. It means that you're releasing yourself from that anger and upset. And, and sometimes you do have to set boundaries. One of my relatives had been borrowing money from my mother, and she would call me and be very upset with me. And I said, well, you really just need to set the boundary. And if this person asks again, you say no. And she finally did that, but it was very difficult for her. So you don't want to keep allowing yourself to be taken advantage of. It's okay to set a boundary, but otherwise, just like Greta said, let it go, but make sure you don't make that mistake again. Just take care of yourself. And that's loving yourself, isn't it? Having that boundary so that you're honoring yourself and what it is that you need. Now, I know all the panelists have done a lot of affirmations, and we're going to be sending you these afterwards to the mailing list, whoever's on the mailing list. And so I want to ask them to share their affirmations, and why don't you say them like twice so people can really get them. But again, you don't need to rush to write them down because we will be sending them out afterwards. Okay, Doyle, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, one that I've been using a lot, especially this past year, and also thinking about having fun. Like, I never thought prosperity was tied to fun. I always thought it had to be grueling and work. But I've realized that the more fun I have, the more money I make. It's a weird thing. So one of the things, one of my favorite affirmations this past year has been, no matter what I do, my income is constantly increasing. Whether I'm laying around watching Netflix or whether I'm working really hard on getting clients, whatever I'm doing, sleeping, no matter what I do, my income is constantly increasing. That's one of my favorites right now. And then another one I'll share is I choose to be rich in all aspects of my life, not just at work, but also in my time. Like Louise talks about being prosperous in time and love in relationships, all of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I choose to be rich in all aspects of my life.
Beautiful. Okay, great. Okay, Greta, I know you have some affirmations to share as well.
I do. One is I give myself permission to prosper.
Mm,
I like to give myself permission to prosper because otherwise I'm usually we're the ones getting in the way. And then another one that really resonates with me is my supply comes from God, and big, happy financial surprises now come to me under grace in perfect ways.
Big, happy financial surprises. That's a great one. Very good. Thank you. Sandra.
My favorite is also a Karen Drucker song, and so I like to amp it up with a little singing, and that one
Okay.
is money is coming to me easily and effortlessly. Money is coming to me. I got money.
Okay, and if those of you on the webinar, if you haven't heard of Karen Drucker, she is amazing, and you can search her on YouTube and find that particular song along with lots of other chants that she does. And one of her chants is, I am so blessed and I am so grateful. So that's another piece of prosperity is gratitude. You know, to be grateful for what you have at the moment and to be grateful for anything else that comes into your life that you're affirming for or manifesting, etc. And the gratitude is really huge. And I think along with the gratitude for me, also being able to donate to some causes that I believe in and some, you know, especially now with what's going on in our country and things we donate, Rick and I donate to Feeding America because that's a food bank that can help people, you know, who are in need and things like that. So there's a donation aspect of the, you know, the receiving and the giving and receiving that for me has also been really important along with the gratitude. Absolutely. Okay, Susan.
Yes, so one of my favorites that I just have a visual with is my pipeline is flowing abundantly. So a big thing that I learned from Louise is what Chrissy was talking about is that we go to the ocean and we can go with a thimble or a bucket or a pipeline. And so that's just my visualization of, you know, and the ocean is abundant. So it doesn't affect other people in a negative way. So my pipeline is flowing abundantly. And then in speaking to keeping money, I always visualize and say my bank accounts are overflowing.
Okay, great. Wonderful. And, you know, when you first start doing affirmations, they're not where you are affirming, right? They're not there. And so sometimes we get a little impatient with them being there. And that's piece of it is to be patient with just continuing to trust and believe and allow the universe to bring you things in the way that comes along. And I know for myself, one of the other beliefs I had growing up was because when I got an allowance, I always spent all of it. I never had any until, you know, the next one came along. So that was something that happened when I became an adult and was working and getting an income, is I was always at the edge at the end of every paycheck. And usually it was like minus something. And so when I first started doing the prosperity work, it was plus something, but it wasn't a lot. It was like $10 or $25, but I would celebrate that I was actually still having money at the end of the month before my next paycheck and being grateful for that. And so as time went on, that, you know, became larger and larger. So that's another piece of it, is that you have to be just really committed to making the changes in your life that you want to make. And you will look back in a few years and just see amazing changes that you might not have seen with the little steps coming along. But once you get to another place, you'll see the big steps that really happened. And that's what's really so important. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there was somebody on the chat that got a phone call while we were talking that she owed a little bit of money for some tax work and was a little annoyed about that. And then got another call right while she was in the webinar saying, oh, mistake, no, you don't have to do that. You don't have to pay anything extra. So great. See, there's prosperity coming in already. Okay, Christy, any specific affirmations that you would particularly like to share?
So it's the one that I keep saying, obviously, there is more than enough. But I also really love, and I use it a lot, and I just find myself using it kind of randomly. It's not because I'm desperately in need of extra income, but just, you know, money comes to me in unexpected ways. And if it just pops in my head, I just kind of go, there's a reason for that. And I, use it then for a little while. And it does come to me in unexpected ways.
Yeah. One of the ones that Louise often said was, my income is constantly increasing. And I've added to that one because what I've seen happen, and some of you who are panelists may have seen this with yourself, is you're affirming for your income constantly increasing. And let's say you get an extra check for $200 or $300, and then suddenly your car breaks down. And you need to, I'm seeing some nods here. And so what I added in there was my income is constantly increasing as my expenses stay the same or proportionately less. And so that in there was saying, okay, I can continue to increase and I'm not then feeling at some unconscious level of myself, oh, it's going to go out again. And that answers the question that someone had on here previously as well, is, about keeping the flow rather than having it all go out. And that's a part of just knowing that your income can increase while your expenses don't have to change proportionately, so that it's all going out. So that's another one. And, one of the ones that I'll encourage all of us to do right now, and this is one of, Louise's that is so great, where you open your arms to the universe. I am open and receptive. I am open and receptive to all good and the abundance of the universe. So I'm open and receptive to all good and the abundance of the universe. And, that gets back to the whole idea of deserving, doesn't it? That I deserve to be prosperous. And, it's okay to feel like you do deserve it. It's okay to really love and approve of yourself. Absolutely. So we're just about the end of our hour here with the webinar, and I'm going to thank everybody for, our panelists, and I'm going to ask you for your last words of wisdom here, and then also thank all the people that came on the webinar today. And again, you'll be getting a follow-up with the recording of this and also the affirmations that have been shared on the webinar as well. And we just absolutely encourage you to continue doing that inner work. If you want some additional help, the coaches on our call and Sandra, our teacher training, can, all be helpful to you. You'll have the contact information for them if you want. Okay, and someone raised their hand, but I'm not sure. Can you post on the chat if you've got a final question for us? That would be great if you could post that. Oops. Okay, I don't see anything. So, okay, let me just go around. Doyle, any last words that you would like to share?
I would first like to say thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Patricia, for allowing me to be here. I would encourage you all to choose to feel prosperous right now because you deserve it.
Yeah, thank you. Greta.
I would say that you are worthy and deserving of prosperity, abundance, and love.
All right, thank you. Susan.
I would say, yes, that's where the most important work is really learning to love yourself. So as we talked about, the mirror work and just looking at your beliefs, what are they, and releasing them if they're not serving you.
Mm-hmm. Great. Christy.
Yeah, I just say, go back to that deservability and know that you are really worthy and deserving of everything you're looking for in life, prosperity being one of them.
Mm-hmm. Great. Sandra.
So mine is find a penny, pick it up. If you saw money, grab it and then celebrate it. Do a little dance. Let the universe know how happy you are, right?
I used to hear Wayne Dyer say that, people are affirming for prosperity and they see a penny and go, oh, it's just a penny. But he said, he picked up a penny. That's a great, reminder that, every little bit is important to really say that's a nice little sign from the universe and stuff too. And I'll also say that if, you've heard the wonderful stories with everyone here and how much the Heal Your Life work has changed their lives, and the teacher training has, and the coach training has changed it even more. So Sandra has 2 trainings coming up this year, one in June in Tampa and one in October in San Diego. And those again are on the emails that we send out. So I would highly recommend that you consider, affirming to come to one of those and not only really make deeper insights for yourself, but also come out with your ability to help others to do workshops. And if you pursue the coaching, to do coaching as well. You know, we really, I say we have the best jobs in the world, really, because not only do they help us emotionally, spiritually, you know, in every way, but also it gives us the tools to help other people make dramatic changes in their lives. And we would love to continue to help you. So thank you very much. I encourage you, thank you for showing up, for taking the time to be here, which is a commitment to yourself to be able to be here and say, yes, I do want to do some additional kinds of things. So have a wonderful rest of your day, wherever you happen to be. Do your affirmations, go to the mirror and say, thank you for showing up to this webinar today, and do some affirmations in the mirror. Namaste. And wonderful to have you all here today. And thank you so much to all our panelists for all their wonderful wisdom and sharing everything that they've shared today. Okay, bye-bye, everybody. Take care.